Now this week, Rose and I are building and running our own online auction. Now we used to do this fairly regularly. It was a way to sell big quantities of small items to recoup expense when we didn't want to put the items up on eBay. Now, why not put items up on eBay? We've been selling on eBay for over 20 years. Well, sometimes the items are too big. They're just flat out not something I want to ship. Sometimes they're in big quantity, but the individual value of the items doesn't really justify the time it takes to put up an item on eBay and create a listing. Well, happy Thanksgiving. And it's sunny. Yeah, we're back from Key West. It's the first real sunny day since we returned. So I thought I'd take a minute, get away from editing videos about Key West and go on to a couple of other things that are happening. Sometimes the quantity in the lot, such as all this Star Trek stuff, it was just a huge buy. So we sorted it out. We actually divided it into 3 categories. Good items for eBay, the best items in the group, good size, good value, good condition. The next group, similar size, less value, and we thought we'd send them to a local auction. Often they were redundant. We had too many of the same particular thing, the action figures. We might have 5 Constable Odos. So some would go in our auction, some would go to a local consignment auction. Now here are some of the Star Trek figures that were duplicates, redundant, lower value, the ones we sent to a local consignment auction. I think altogether there's about 20 figures in this auction currently running. And for this service, we will pay a commission. We don't take the photos, we don't write the titles, we don't do the shipping if they're sold to a buyer who wants them shipped. We pay a commission instead. Third reason, space and recoupment of capital. When you've got to buy a big group, sometimes you have to get items you're not particularly or as interested in. But to make the deal happen, you've got to take it all. And you need to shift some of that stuff that's not going to go on eBay. Primarily, the auction we're working on this week is for sci-fi, science fantasy, science fiction, and superhero action figures. Now, some are new and sealed, some are new old stock, some are loose. I've got a bunch of loose Star Wars 4-inch type figures. If I were to send these to the local auction, I lose control of what the listing says, the number of photos, and the minimum price. Because this is one of the key points. When you run your own auction, you have more control over what the buyers see. The quality of the photos, the starting price, the shipping terms, you get to set them within the boundaries of the platform you're using as a host. Let's back up a minute. Now, online auctions have been around a long time. In fact, eBay started as an online auction platform. They actually started as something else before they became eBay, but eBay initially was primarily for auctioning off items. New items, used items, broken items. First item sold on eBay, as I recall, was a broken laser pointer. Now, of course, eBay sells mostly, buy it now, fixed price items. They still run auctions, and recently I logged into the platform and noticed there's a big new banner up top that says they're running live auctions. So they're now letting their sellers actually stand up in front of people and sell live. I think that's probably a direct response to the whatnot type platforms that have entered the market. So by eBay entering that market, they think they can steal back the share they've lost. Maybe. I have my doubts about it though. I peeked in on it the day I saw the banner, and the guy was selling like trading cards. Wasn't a category I was interested in. Does this guy look like you'd trust him to sell, ship, and represent eBay in their new live streaming? I'm not so sure. Scan here to download the eBay app and get live streams at your fingertips. Okay, let's see what else we got. Generally, so far, these are not in categories I'm interested in. But it is interesting that eBay has branched into this earth-cut crystal. These look a little bit sketchy. But then I suppose if we could really see the people behind many of the eBay stores, we'd probably have the same, feeling. What are we doing here? Prime time sports. So I guess these are signed photographs. But as with any new feature, it's going to attract those people who are looking to try something new. $1 starts sudden death Pokemon singles. I suspect most of these sellers were probably on other similar platforms, and they're giving eBay a try because they want to know if they can reach eBay's buyer pool. They may have something. A lot of them are probably using their off stock and loss leaders just to see if they can make something happen. But as often happens, a certain niche is invited to use a new product like live auctions, and eventually it expands to other people. So will eBay make this work? I don't know. Don't really care. Live auctions have never been my idea of why I use eBay. To run your own auctions, you've got to have a platform. You've got to have a physical software platform where people can open their smartphones, open their laptops, find your auction, and bid on your products. So you need a software application platform. You need a host site. Now, most resellers find online auctions as buyers. They see them as a way to maybe expand their sourcing opportunities, especially during the winter when the garage sale season is shut down. So they go online and they start looking for local auctions or auctions that will ship if they're not local. And I do it. It's my primary source of sourcing. It's the primary way I source. Years ago, and I'm talking early 2000s, a program called ProxyBid came along, and it allowed me, living in Seebeck in a fairly rural area, to host and run my own auctions. I was introduced to it by a guy who ran a hybrid auction near Bremerton, Washington. And I took a look at it. I paid my fees, I signed up, and I think I ran 4 or 5 of them. But it became apparent that there were some limitations with this software. The same limitations, to one extent or another, still exist, and we'll get into that. First, you've got to pick a hosting site. Now, there are many out there. Their fee structures vary, the operation of the actual software varies, the popularity varies, because it doesn't do you any good to put all the effort into creating an auction if nobody comes. In fact, one of the biggest nightmares an auctioneer has is if I have an auction and nobody shows, right? Did a tree fall in the woods? So one of the biggest fears any auction company has is I put all the time and effort into creating an auction, paying salary, paying people, and the buyers don't show up in enough quantity, in enough numbers to make it a success. All of a sudden the auction's got a problem. And I've actually, back when I did physical brick and mortar auctions, we see that situation from time to time. I remember one time there was this big freak snowstorm. We were auctioning off the contents of a restaurant that closed down. Came time for the auction. I think there were 5 people who managed to brave the snow. The auctioneer actually ended up delaying for an hour until he got about 12 people to show up and sell the contents of that auction. Another one was just so remote that he went to do the sale. I don't even think there were 5 people. So he made the decision on the spot, cancel the auction, physically move the contents back to their facility, and hold and reschedule the auction again. Now, those were brick and mortar auctions. But if you started as a buyer in brick and mortar auctions, it's an easy transition to online auctions. There's some differences, there are some different rules, there are some different fees, but if you understand the one, you'll understand the other. So most people start out as buyers if they're resellers on online platforms or through sites like Facebook. They attend brick and mortar or online auctions, they get inventory. So if you're using online auctions to source, you probably have some opinions about the particular software applications that are running these. I know I do. Some of them very convenient for buyers. Some, they're a pain in the arse. They just are. They're difficult to use. They're awkward. The rules never seem to be clearly stated. You end up having to ask questions when all the terms should actually be right there available to you to read. When you decide you want to start selling on online auctions, you get to see another half of the software. You get to see the back end. And in the back end, you'll really learn to see whether or not that software is useful or a pain. And it's one of the reasons we tried out and stopped using proxy bid 20 odd years ago. It would often, I mean, we're talking dial up here. So I had to get my photos and my data to load into their server on a dial up line. And often I would simply lose the data, I'd lose the individual listings, and I'd have to redo it 2-3 times. Now, if you use a site like eBay and you've ever taken the time to fill out a template for a new item, and you go to hit upload and it won't upload, and you have to start over from scratch, you know what I'm talking about. But if it's half the items in an auction and it keeps happening and happening, you begin to lose faith in the company that's hosting your auction. The other point that still exists today is that if you're remote and people aren't going to want to come out and see a live physical preview, or they're not going to want to drive to where you're physically located to do a pickup, and you don't want to offer shipping, you're going to have a problem hosting and running an online auction. Shipping is the answer in many cases, but if what you're shipping are garden trellises and potted plants, you're going to not be able to ship those. Those are going to be local pickup, and you're likely to see the sale reduce if you compare it to an auction house in a larger city, in a bigger town where there are more people and the population is greater. That's common sense, but really the only way you're going to know is to run an auction and see how it works. And the last thing you want to do is host an auction in which nobody comes, because repeat buyers are important for a platform. And it's one of the things you're going to want to look into as you pick who your hosting platform is going to be. Is it well known in your area? Is it popular? Do your friends and neighbors and competition use it? Or is it so obscure, it's great for buyers, especially if they ship, but it's not so good for sellers because often lots go unsold. The auction Rose and I have set up right now, running this week, has 162 lots in it. I like to have between 150 and 200 lots for these auctions. They can be bigger. In fact, one of the hosting platforms I'll show you that I copied off the screen this morning, it has 7 pages or 8 pages in its auction. So it's probably over 1,000 lots. Now, an auction I buy from regularly in the local area, it typically has 1,000 to 1,200 lots as well. And these are big physical lots, but they're a commercial auction. They're a permanent presence in the community. They've been selling for years. People know where they are. It's a city, and they rarely ever have a single unsold lot at the price they start the bids at. The platforms that exist, you've got High Bid, you've got Proxy Bid, you've got Auction Ninja, you've got eBay. Those are all auction hosting platforms. How easy they are to use and what their fees are varies considerably. For instance, eBay, before the live auction came online this last week or so, you had to put up individual lots and you had to fill out all the details just like a regular listing. And then you simply marked auction and it ran as an auction. I don't recommend it on eBay. Some people have success with it if they already have big followings and have built up. But you can easily spend a lot of time with loss leaders drawing a crowd to your site or your auction in order to get regular reoccurring profit. Now, these other auctions, you can build them a couple of ways. You can build them complete and entirely with your product. You own the product. You're in control. And that's what Rose and I do. We'll pick a category or a general auction, and we'll say every lot in this auction is going to be, for instance, sci-fi and action heroes. Or you can turn around and you can say, I'm going to do caps. I'm going to do baseball caps. I'm going to put up 200 vintage caps, and it's going to be a cap auction. Or you could say caps, belt buckles, and cowboy boots. You can diversify a bit. Or you can say it's a general auction. right? Anything and everything randomly, from Star Trek figures to wheelbarrows. You can do it. You may or may not be successful. Now, companies that use these auction platforms, like us, you register with the hosting platform, you provide them a bunch of business information, you pay some fees probably up front, then you upload your first auction. It's a slog. Learning to use a platform is a pain. But if you think it's something you're going to want to keep doing, it may be worthwhile. Now, other companies, for instance, you've seen Blue Nest, which is a local company that they don't host the auction. They're the labor pool that goes out and takes on the job of setting up someone's house or their estate or their farm or their business to liquidate the contents. So they're the middleman. They're not the owner of the property being sold. They're not the hosting company. They're the ones creating the auction on the platform for their customer, and they take a fee. So the customer actually ends up paying a fee to Blue Nest. Blue Nest then pays its employees, covers its bills, and pays a fee to an auction platform for the rights to put up an auction. And then their buyer pool comes in and they bid on it and they buy the items, and then Blue Nest takes care of the pickup. They're there at the person's house when the buyers arrive to load out, and the staff at Blue Nest takes care of the loadout. How well they do as far as selling everything in the auction depends on the contents of the auction. It depends on the buyer pool. What they do with what's left depends on their agreement and contract with the consignor. Makes sense. It's no different than a brick and mortar auction house that actually has an auctioneer standing there outside the house selling things like couches and dog kennels and action figures. Getting your auction well known. For instance, once ours was online this week and it's available, Rose likes to use Facebook to advertise our auction. It's one of the ways she gets the word out into the community. She'll run ads on Facebook. She'll send out notices onto some of these platform boards for community forums. She wants to advertise the fact that we are running an auction. This particular auction, we've got a chainsaw running in the background now. This particular auction is a combination of any lot can be picked up locally or shipped, because these are relatively small. The items that are bigger than an action figure, they will cost more, and the buyer will have to pay the full shipping. Now, those are set up in the terms of the auction software. And you better make sure that your buyers understand that. Otherwise, they'll be trying to cancel their orders, their invoices, their bids, or they'll be trying to do chargebacks with their credit card companies to say, we don't want it. We didn't know the terms. We missed that. We want out of it. And of course, that causes problems for you, the auction house, the seller. Other platforms will sometimes sell just local pickup, no shipping or little shipping. The commercial auction I use is like that. Now, one thing about the commercial auction is that when they started a few years ago, a couple of brothers, I met them right after they set up their auction. They decided to rent a big space, has a large compound outside, and they were going to auction random contents for consigners. So they were going to let people like me bring them items, a trailer load, a car load, a big lumber pile, industrial products, small residential products, pallet returns. So they were going to be selling random items. And initially it was all local pickup. So they were sitting in a city though, so their buyer pool was pretty large. And they were going to run an auction once a month, which is why they could run like 1,200 lots. They intake the items, they check the items over, they lot up the items, they photograph them, they put them up in the auction. Now, one thing they did, and since I've only ever been a buyer on the site, I've never seen the back end of their software, but they actually went out and had their software specifically created for them. So I believe it is probably one of the best softwares to use as a buyer. I hope it's just as easy for them as a seller listing items, because some softwares are a nightmare. Now, the one we settled on was Auction Ninja, and we did it for a reason, and we'll get into that. But I would say it's a good buyer platform. It's organized pretty well. It's easy to see what's being sold. The data is available. There are lots of boxes and fields available to the lister to get the information to the buyer. Now, there's another one out called Max Sold. Doesn't work as well. They've done some changes. The photos are better. There are a few more in my area that are just so hard to use as a buyer, I don't even bother checking their auctions anymore. But we're not talking about the front end that's visible to the buyer. It should meet a certain level. Otherwise, buyers like me will not use it. But I'm talking about the back end. Does it flow? Do you get good customer support when you have a problem? Is it easy to understand and follow the instructions? Well, Auction Ninja falls into the middle of the road there. This being Thanksgiving week, they sent out a note that said, we're going to shut down for a day, so there'll be minimum response from our IT department if you have an issue. And of course, we had an issue. But actually, somebody did respond and solve the problem for us. Back-end view that the seller sees. Lots of data blocks available for use if you decide to use them. Places to upload photos. You can assign a client if they're consigning. This is a continuous running number as opposed to a lot. Titles, descriptions. You can even give the bidders estimates if you wanted to. Assign it to an auction, set a starting price, provide dimensions. You can give it a category. You can then put in condition notes separate from the description and give it your shipping services. Lots of versatility. The actual process of going through the back end that buyers don't see is variable, and it can be difficult until you've done enough of them to get used to it. In our case, we took a break for quite a while because we were using the local auction house and just taking our lots. So I had to relearn it, and some of it came back to me as I did it. And at least one trick that I'd learned from using it in the past was to put little lot numbers next to each of the lots in the lead photo. Because the way their system rearranges lots, if you just take a bunch of random pictures and then you say, well, I want this to be lot 1 because it'll draw attention, but you photographed it as the 20th item, it really creates a mess as you start to shuffle. Now, when Blue Nest does an entire estate, I always find where they began to do the pictures interesting because they're using the same site. So I'm sure it's a challenge for them. So they pick a room and they photograph. But what it means is that their lot, their order of sale, might start in a laundry room or a pantry or a kitchen. But 50 lots later, they've got some really nice, expensive items, including the car sitting in the driveway, right? But it's buried because of the way they progress through. And I am sure that, just as me, they find that shifting lots after the fact and rearranging photos is too hard. It sucks too much time. So there are some things you'll want to understand as you check out different platforms, different host sites, to decide which one works for you. One of the biggest is fee structure. First one we looked at was Max Sold, and we found that they were basically set up to allow homeowners or third parties to sell off lots, the contents of their home. They work in both Canada and in the US. Other companies, like Blue Nest, can do the same thing. They can do the work for a consignor using a third platform. Well, Blue Nest is one of those companies that got off of Max Sold and onto Ninja because the fee structure was too expensive. They were charging big upfront fees and then letting you run an auction. So each time you wanted to run an auction, you paid a full fee. Because I think they did it that way because primarily their customers were not auction houses planning repetitive auctions. They were individual homeowners with a one-time need. And that really changes the fee structures. The way Ninja is set up, their platform is designed more for resellers like us who run a business, or companies that want to add auctions to their existing business model in a reoccurring manner. And that was our plan originally, because we were between local consignment auctions. We had stopped using the large commercial auction because their business model had changed. They stopped taking small shop tools and loose lots and shifted over to excavators and Connex boxes and big ticket items. So they grew out of what we had to sell. So we had a gap before we found the next one, which would again take small tools and boxes. So in that gap, we decided, well, we might as well just run our own auctions. Decade had passed, easy decade, maybe 15 years since that proxy bid fiasco on the dial-up. And we said the softwares, we're using it as buyers, so the software must be working better. And we were using a lot of them. So we began talking to the sales reps, the different companies. Max sold. What do you charge? What's your fee structure? What are your percentages? How do you process your credit card payments? Because most of these online auctions get paid with credit card. We began comparing them, and it really was an apples to pineapples comparison. There weren't any oranges. There were apples and there were pineapples. So we got around to Auction Ninja. We'd been using it as a buyer. We talked to them. They said there's an initial buy-in fee to register. I think Rose said it was $250. Then we're going to charge you a monthly subscription fee of $19.19. Doesn't matter whether you run one auction, no auctions, 15 auctions. You're going to pay a monthly subscription fee. It's like the eBay store subscription to get you access to more features. And then every time you host an auction, every time you put up an auction, we're going to charge you either $75 to run the auction, doesn't matter how many lots, or a percentage, whichever is greater. We went with those guys. We paid our money. We set up our business details with them. We ran our first auction. We also had to select a credit card processing company. In our case, Auction Ninja had a couple that they worked with. One of them was Stripe. Their fees looked more reasonable than the other choices, so we did it. And Rose told me, let's see, Stripe takes about 1%. So you're paying the auction hosting company and you're paying the credit card processing company every time a buyer bids, wins, and pays you. And they process that, you don't even see it. You have to deal with taxes, though, which is another thing to find out. With eBay deals with paying the state governments the taxes. The auction hosting companies usually don't. So you set it up, you run it, you learn the process of, identifying the items you want to sell, getting them photographed, getting the photos uploaded. And in our case, I tend to do the photographing. Rose tends to upload the photos. They have to move from the smartphone, which we use as a camera, into the auction hosting platform. Then I come back through and I do the titles, very similar to an eBay title. There's a whole bunch of other data blocks that are available to you. I skip them. Since we're normally selling items that are going to sell between $5 and $20, I don't spend a lot of time per lot putting in details. I let the photos show the buyers what they're going to get. Condition, size, color, whether it's sealed, whether it's loose, quantity. I put a steel ruler in. I put a lot number on. So I don't have to provide a lot of extra data. Now, does it hurt my auctions? Probably a little bit. I occasionally get a question from somebody, though, that says, lot 62, I don't really see the condition of the packaging. Can you take another photo of the corners? And I will. I'll add it, and then everybody can see it. Now, if I were selling $100, $200, $500 lots, then I would probably fill out more of the data. Condition code, size, age. I'd put more details in the description. But there's a quick listing method on Ninja where basically you've got your photos there, you add anything in addition you want, you say next, it saves it, and you move to the next one. And you can step through them fairly quickly. You also have to indicate whether you want them to ship. Are they local pickup? Are they shippable? And you've got to put in the back end, you've got to put in the details about whether you're going to have an on-site preview. We usually say no preview, whether you're going to be local pickup only, whether you're going to ship, and then there's a place to put in the terms of the shipping. Now, one of the limitations with this Auction Ninja platform that has always annoyed me is that their shipping interface was set up to only be USPS priority flat rate boxes, which pretty much limits you to about 4 sizes, small, medium, large boxes and a padded mailer or one of the mailers. That means if you're trying to sell items in the $5 to $10 range, you're charging $9, $10, $12 for the shipping label. So if a buyer only buys one item, you've doubled their cost. Now you're hoping that those buyers will see 10, 15, 20 items that they bid on and win. And that way, a 162 lot auction, you might only have 10 boxes to send because a buyer bought 15 items or 20 items. And I like those. I once had a buyer buy about 60 items and I had 4 of my largest boxes to send UPS, because that's my point. Better shipping interfaces will give you all of the regular USPS options, the priority options, the flat rate options, the ground advantage options. It'll give you options for UPS, so you can send the larger items UPS, or multi-lot items. Once they're packed and they're in bigger boxes, you can send those UPS. So what we end up doing is a workaround. And when you find an auction platform that generally fits your needs, your business model, but not completely, you end up creating workarounds. And in our case, what we do is we leave the Ninja platform and we go on to Pirate Ship and we pull all of our lots, and then we manually type in the addresses for our buyers, and we buy our shipping labels through Pirate Ship for our auctions. It's one of the workarounds. Because the other funny thing about Auction Ninja is they don't charge you each time you print a label. You have to put a balance into a shipping account, and then they draw on that balance. And when you notice it getting low, you have to put in another block of money. Oddest thing I think I've ever seen for paying for shipping. Sites like Pirate Ship, you buy a label, you pay for it. You buy a label, you pay for it. Goes on your credit card. If you've got one of those credit cards that gives you frequent flyer miles or gives you a cash back, you get a little cash back from buying your shipping labels. Now, for my eBay items, I normally use eBay. For my auction items, I use Pirate Ship. We got a second Rolo printer. We set it up on the dining room. Rose simply goes through it. We build the auction invoices. We send out the billing. And that's an interesting thing because the system, the Ninja system, automatically bills the buyers after the auction for the hammer price, the sales tax. But they don't bill them for the shipping because you don't know what it is. Later, when you've added it up, totaled it, figured it out, know which vendor, which carrier you're going to use, what size box, you put it into Pirate Ship, you figure it out, you send their credit card a second charge for shipping. And then once it's paid, you then print the label. So it's a little bit tedious. And if Ninja would fix one thing, it would be their shipping interface. It would have me doing handstands if they would solve those problems. And I've been writing them notes for years, sending them feedback, talking to their reps on the phone, and it's just something they can't seem to get over. But then oddly, when I ran into the glitch this week, I went onto YouTube and I actually put Auction Ninja because I wanted to see videos that were current about issues with Auction Ninja. There hadn't been a new video put out by those people in 3 years, I think. They're pretty static in their change, which is almost the opposite extreme as eBay. eBay makes so many changes so often. I scream and pull my hair out. I pull my hair out because the changes are confusing. They don't often always work. They're just changing just for the sake of change. Well, Ninja, I don't think they ever changed. I wish they'd change. I wish they'd make some improvements. But our problem this week is actually launching the auction. We had everything ready to go. I'd put out all the information about pickup times and fees and tax percentages, shipping terms. All the photos were up. The listing descriptions were up. And the button to hit launch wasn't there. where's the button to launch? And I'm looking through their help pages and I'm looking on YouTube videos and I can't find it. It's just not there. So we sent an IT request for action about an hour after we got the note that said they were taking the holiday off. But he actually answered and he said, sometime back in April, our automatic subscription, because it's paid automatically every month, 1919, wasn't paid for April because we hadn't used this site, for, I think almost a year while we've been using the local consignment auction. So a month was skipped. And sure enough, we did a little looking and it found out that when our credit card company changed our card number, even though there was automatic billing and automatic billing, old card, new card, the month it transitioned was the same week. So an unpaid $19.19. And instead of Auction Ninja contacting us or resolving the issue or notifying us that there was an issue, they simply removed the launch button. Now, again, like I say, different companies' customer service levels vary. And if you sell on eBay, you know that. If you sell on any of the others, you know that as well. This will probably be just the first in a couple of videos, because once we actually see the results of the auction, I'll do a follow-up video on how it went. Factors like where you initiate your starting price. Some people call it a reserve, some call it a first bid, but where you set that minimum bid price can really affect your auction. The local consignment company we use, he's on a different platform. He sets his minimums at $5. So any lot, big or small, valuable, cheap, the minimum bid is $5. Well, I like to float mine based on, if it's a Spider-Man puzzle, I think I put it up as a $2 start. Some of the other items, I put them up as a $6 start. But if you set your start too high, nobody will want to break that initial barrier. Some companies don't bother putting up anything. $1 is your minimum bid, and $1 is your starting bid increments. It increases as the bid climbs, but it's to get people interested in saying, boy, I could have that for $1. And that's what you have to remember as a seller. Whatever that minimum bid is, they could have that for the minimum bid, and you're obligated to sell it to them. And that's why you don't want to undercut your shipping. If you're selling items at $5 and $10 and they're not local pickup and you promise to ship them, you better make sure you're making a little money on that shipping, because shipping consumes time. Getting those packages to UPS consumes time. And the auction's running this week. When the auction wraps, I'll give you some more information about how we did with our sell-through rate, how the shipping went, that type of thing. Because it is a process. Setting it up consumes several partial days, which means I'm not doing my eBay listing as I do this. Photography takes time. I think the first day we photographed a little over 100 items. Then my phone had to go on the charger. Next day in the afternoon, I photographed the rest of them. Then Rose had to take the time and upload those photos into the listing. Then I had to sit down on another day and go through them and write the descriptions, add our shipping information, that type of thing. So it all takes time. So you need to make sure that your payment, your profit for your effort, is equal to what the time would be spent selling in another way, like eBay or Facebook. You got to make sure that in the end, the effort is worth something to you. You had a goal, get rid of items you don't want to put up on eBay. The question is, how do your results compare? What did it really take per hour of effort? Did you make some money?